Facebook and Twitter tweeting about it. Conversation is blowing up. Even Jay-Z, when you're talking about celebrities, have given their support, showing their support for Daniel Bryan. It's just amazing how many Daniel Bryan fans we have out there. Celebrities, wrestling fans, wrestlers themselves, tweeting about it, talking about it on their Facebook fan pages, people posting pictures of themselves with Daniel Bryan. Everybody remembering Daniel Bryan for who he really was and how they feel he should be remembered for being. And that's why I'm really excited to find out how Daniel Bryan is going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. Obviously, someone who had an influence on Daniel Bryan's life is going to be inducting him into the Hall of Fame. I think it's going to be a toss-up between either Kane or Connor's father who's going to be inducting Daniel Bryan into the Hall of Fame. It wouldn't surprise me none if it was both of these individuals. I say Kane because of how Team Hell No really changed the complexity and the direction of the WWE Tag Team division, winning the tag team titles from the Primetime Players back in 2010, 2011, and graduating from that anger management in Dr. Shelby's class. They got a plaque last Monday on Raw, so it wouldn't surprise me none if Kane was the one who inducted Daniel Bryan, removing the mask the way he did last Monday on Raw, thanking Daniel Bryan, and of course Daniel Bryan saying that Kane was one of the smartest individuals that he ever had the chance to work with, both himself and The Undertaker, who touched Daniel Bryan in ways that nobody Daniel Bryan had ever worked with before in his life ever did. I think some of his greatest matches also were credited to the matches he had with CM Punk from Ring of Honor, of course, and the WWE. I mean, incredible matches we saw between Daniel Bryan and CM Punk. They didn't even have to be for the championship. Now, I remember a couple of weeks prior to a WrestleMania when Daniel Bryan and CM Punk had these incredible matches on both Raw and SmackDown. It was a great way to set up for WrestleMania. Of course, AJ was also involved in the program. I'll talk about AJ here in a little bit. But the matches between Daniel Bryan and CM Punk really set an example of what this business is really all about. And what he did for AJ was incredible too, because after working with Daniel Bryan, both the careers of Daniel Bryan and especially AJ took off. AJ went on to become the longest reigning Divas champion in history since the inception of the championship, won by Michelle McCool for the first time ever back in 2008. And it really set the example of what champions really need to strive to be when AJ became champion, winning it 295 days, holding it, never being beaten. And it all goes back to Daniel Bryan and what both Daniel Bryan and AJ did for both of their careers as singles wrestlers, both wrestlers and divas. It really defined what this business is really all about. And the psychology that we saw between Daniel Bryan and AJ falling in love with each other, and the purpose of the storyline, of course, it wasn't actually a storyline because of the relationship between AJ and CM Punk, but also that relationship was looked at in a wrestling angle for the purpose of a storyline, with AJ and Punk being involved in storylines where AJ was the general manager of Raw. She didn't really agree with what Punk was doing as the WWE champion, and then Daniel Bryan got involved with the storyline too. But just the storyline and the chemistry that we saw between AJ and Daniel Bryan really benefited both of them in the long run. There are so many moments that we can talk about and discuss as fans of Daniel Bryan for what Daniel Bryan did, but I don't think there's ever going to be a performer quite like Daniel Bryan, and just the support that he received from both wrestlers that he worked with and all these legends, especially Shawn Michaels, who played an avid role in Daniel Bryan's success, training him, of course, in Texas, and then Daniel Bryan going all the way to WWE. Without question, Shawn Michaels had a huge influence on Daniel Bryan getting to where he did, of course, pushing Triple H to really get behind Daniel Bryan, which Triple H did, knowing the talent that Daniel Bryan was. Of course, Triple H giving him the championship at a celebration of Daniel Bryan's career, saying that his place had been etched in history and in the Hall of Fame, taking his Hall of Fame walk this past Monday on Raw. And I also really appreciated, not only the comments from Triple H and Stephanie for what Daniel Bryan did in the WWE, but the comments that were dropped by the commentators, especially Michael Cole, who kept the headset on the whole time during the Daniel Bryan celebration. And when Daniel Bryan came out and hugged both JBL, Byron Saxton, and Michael Cole made some pretty accurate comments saying that Daniel Bryan was one of the greatest of all time, taking his Hall of Fame walk, which without a doubt he did. And I think those comments dropped by the commentators really defined what Daniel Bryan was really all about. Daniel Bryan winning the United States Championship when he had not won a single match in his career, winning the first ever match of his career by winning the United States Championship. I think he was 0-10 by the time he won the United States Championship, and that really proved to me that Daniel Bryan was what people had said he was for years, an underdog who didn't really expect much for a wrestling career, or wasn't really expected by much from the fans, but then he turned around and won the United States Championship the way that he did. And he would go on to garner so many honors after winning the first ever United States Championship that he held. The United States Championship reign he had first off didn't last no time, but after he won the United States Championship, then he went on to win so many accolades from tag team titles, which he had the majority of his success as a wrestler in. The tag team division is where Daniel Bryan really was catapulted, and it was credited to people like Kane, who he held the tag team titles with. If not for Kane benefiting Daniel Bryan, like he had so many tag team partners over the years, going back as far as the Hurricane and Sean Waltman, Kane used that same kind of psychology to really benefit Daniel Bryan. And if you ask Kane, who it wouldn't surprise me none if he was inducting Daniel Bryan into the Hall of Fame this year for the profound effect he had on the wrestling industry. If you ask Kane, who is your greatest tag team partner you've worked with over the years, from The Undertaker to The Hurricane to everybody that you've worked with, Sean Waltman, he'd obviously say The Undertaker, yes, because of course of the history that we know from The Undertaker and Kane's history as the Brothers of Destruction. But obviously, arguably, he would say that it's Daniel Bryan without a doubt. I also remember when Daniel Bryan was a part of the Nexus and he first came into the WWE and nobody was really paying attention to Daniel Bryan. And then Daniel Bryan was involved in that raid of Raw when the Nexus showed up and tirade Raw and destroyed the set. And Daniel Bryan applied this illegal chokehold on this announcer, and then he was fired a few days after. And everybody was so furious, especially Shawn Michaels, who went to social media, who went on Twitter and was furious against WWE for firing Daniel Bryan. John Cena spoke out on it in a promo, and then out of nowhere, Daniel Bryan was rehired. And then Daniel Bryan went on to have these phenomenal matches with the likes of John Cena and Randy Orton, which is really the pinnacle for a new talented Mr. wrestler. And that really stood out to me as really a career-defining moment for Daniel Bryan. He comes back off his first firing. He was a part of Team WWE at SummerSlam 2010. They defeat the Nexus, and then from there, Daniel Bryan goes on to have these award-winning Matches of the Year candidates against people like John Cena. And it was beyond me why Daniel Bryan never did win Match of the Year for his match with John Cena at SummerSlam in 2013, winning this incredible match with John Cena, winning the championship, only to have the championship taken away from him by the Authority, Vince McMahon and Triple H, who had Randy Orton come out as Plan B, cashing in the Money in the Bank briefcase that year. But again, Daniel Bryan going on to have award-winning matches, winning championships at the expense of so many people who are credited to pushing Daniel Bryan, like John Cena, Randy Orton. Many people did over the years, and that's why we're at the point that we are, saying goodbye to Daniel Bryan so emotionally, and that's why I'm so sympathetic towards all these Daniel Bryan fans. As you can figure out and draw your own conclusions about how I feel about Daniel Bryan, obviously I was a really big Daniel Bryan fan. That's why I have so many Daniel Bryan moments that I remember and have not forgotten about, and probably never will forget about, like how John Cena chose Daniel Bryan as his opponent for a match at SummerSlam when he could have chose anybody on the roster. And I think at that moment, that's when Daniel Bryan had stood out more than he had in his entire wrestling career. When you're chosen by someone like John Cena on John Cena's level, yeah, he's not a Hulk Hogan, he's not a Ric Flair, he's not a Sting, he's not an Undertaker, but when you're chosen by someone who's really the face of WWE and has been for years, to face them at SummerSlam in a championship match, you know you're at a level that you don't want to be away from anytime soon, and you want to stay at. And Daniel Bryan did so much to try to stay at that level, and he was screwed out of every opportunity he was. He was held down by the Authority, and in the words of The Rock at WrestleMania 30 in the opening promo, he said Daniel Bryan was going to come out and rise above the Authority, and The Rock's promo was true. Daniel Bryan did rise above the Authority. Months later, winning the championship and holding it only for a month. He had one less title defense than Brock Lesnar, in Daniel Bryan's words, and then he returned off of an injury, and then he came back to win the Intercontinental Championship years later, and only to retire it after just winning it and not losing that championship again. Keep in mind, Daniel Bryan was never defeated for any championship that he had won in the lateral part of his career, especially when you're talking about championships and Intercontinental titles. He had never been beaten for neither the WWE World Heavyweight Championship or the Intercontinental Championship. That's why I say that Daniel Bryan went out on top, and there's no better way for a superstar like Daniel Bryan, the caliber of Daniel Bryan, to go out than to go out on top. And that's why they're putting Daniel Bryan in the Hall of Fame. It may not be for the championships that he won or the main events that he was in. It just may be for the profound effect that he had on the wrestling fans, but at least it's something. It's at least proving a point that you don't really have to do much in the wrestling industry. All you have to have is a certain effect on anyone or anyone you've worked with or any of the fans, and that's why you're going to be honored. And obviously that's why Daniel Bryan's induction is standing out amongst the inductions that we will see this year, like Sting, which Daniel Bryan will have the honor of gracing the WrestleMania stage with this year as one of the Hall of Fame inductees. But I think that this is something that's going to be remembered for a really long time as we shout yes in celebration of the life and career of one Daniel Bryan, who, yeah, undoubtedly I was a fan of. Undoubtedly I will always be a fan and supporter of Daniel Bryan, and that's why I'm going to miss him. I'm going to be honest with you. I kind of have tears in my eyes when I talk about Daniel Bryan with the everyday wrestling fan and just the everyday conversation. Daniel Bryan's name always seems to pop up as the underdog, as someone who could never beat anybody. I remember conversations I used to have with my dad about Daniel Bryan, and he said to me, there's no way someone like Daniel Bryan can beat someone like Undertaker or Brock Lesnar. There's no way Daniel Bryan can beat all the big names that he is. And I remember saying to my dad, yeah, there's a way Daniel Bryan can do it because he's the heart and the perseverance to do it. And that's obviously why there's a lot of wrestling psychology that applies to Daniel Bryan. And that's one conversation I had with my dad, who passed away over 2 years ago, that I'll always remember about Daniel Bryan. And so many conversations I've had with wrestling fans about Daniel Bryan over the years that I'll probably continue to have until the day I die, and my time has surpassed me with professional wrestling. But Daniel Bryan's name is one name that's remained constant with me and always will as one of my all-time favorites and possibly one of the greatest wrestlers and entertainers without a doubt in professional wrestling history. And that's why he's gracing us with his presence in the Hall of Fame that's seated and welcomed less than 100 people since 1993. And if there ever was someone that the Hall of Fame was built for, it obviously was one Daniel Bryan. I'm your host, Jonathan Clarke, and I will talk to you again next week. Like what you hear? Tell us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
I know I'm sexy. I've got the look that drives it goes wild. I've got the move that really move 'em. I said chill up and down their spine. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I make them hot, I make them shiver, then get weak.